China, we have not engaged in negotiations with as of yet.
So we're in the middle of negotiations. It's happening, right? So, okay, didn't even talk to them once. We buy an extraordinary amount of stuff from China, and they're all going to be, in essence, embargoed. I don't think we realize the iceberg we're about to hit. What's going to happen next? Because my theory is disaster is going to happen next.
There are 18 very important trading relationships. We are currently negotiating with 17 of those trading partners. China, we have not engaged in negotiations with as of yet.
So today, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent admitted in a congressional hearing that the United States and China are not actually engaged in any kind of trade negotiations. And that might be a little bit surprising to some of you because Trump has been suggesting that that is exactly what has been happening. And we will show you those receipts in just a little bit. But Cenk, did you expect that negotiations with China were going to take this long to get off the ground? Because we've been hearing since he first launched into these tariffs and caught all of that immediate backlash that don't worry, they're banging down my door trying to negotiate with me.
Yeah, okay, so there's two parts of the story. One is the hilarious lies that they were caught in. So we're in the middle of negotiations, it's happening, right? So, okay, didn't even talk to them once. Okay, so we'll get to some of the receipts on that in a second. And then the second part of the story is, wait, are these tariffs really gonna stay around? Because now some Trump supporters are like, I'm hurt, dog, don't ask me if I'm all right. And does he have a plan? Oh, you know what the answer to that is. But so let's air it all out. Let's see the Republicans who are starting to panic and whether they actually are negotiating or not. So yes, give us the details.
Yeah, so there has been some debate as to whether or not the United States and China are actually having these talks that Trump has been toting about for a while. So here's reporting from the New York Times. It says, in an interview with Time, Trump said Xi had called him, though he declined to say when, and asserted that his team was in active talks with China on a trade deal. Oops. Asked about the interview outside the White House, the president reiterated that he had spoken with the Chinese president numerous times, but he refused to answer when pressed on whether any call had happened after he imposed tariffs this month. Oops. So when Trump asked about negotiations today, things sounded a little bit different. Take a look.
Earlier this morning, Capitol Secretary Bessent said that there had been no negotiations yet with China. You have said something different.
They want to meet, but they want to negotiate and they want to have a meeting, and we'll be meeting with them at the right time.
But you haven't met with them yet.
I have not met with them.
Well, you know what Trump says, we are playing the long game here, right? We got to deal with the short-term pain for the long-term gain. And he is insisting that even if trade completely stops between the United States and China, it will be a net positive. So look at that.
And by not trading, we're losing nothing. So we're saving $1 trillion. It's a lot. We're losing more than $5 billion a day. $5 billion a day. You don't talk about that. And right now, we're going to be at a point very soon where we're making money every day. Look, how soon? We were losing hundreds of billions of dollars with China. Now we're essentially not doing business with China. Therefore, we're saving hundreds of billions of dollars. Very simple.
Is it that simple? Also, why does he speak that way? He's very hard to listen to. But okay, but let's take a look at what the actual implications of these tariffs are. This is from CNN. It says ships now pulling into US harbors from China are the first to be subject to the massive tariffs that America is imposing on most Chinese imports. Many of them are half full. That means in a matter of weeks, consumers will face higher prices and shortages of certain items. So yeah, a lot of people are saying, all these prices are supposed to spike. I'm not seeing it. It's going to be a little bit of a delayed reaction, and that delay seems to be catching up with us very shortly. So in the meantime, Americans are continuing to buy goods that were previously warehoused in the United States, but those stockpiles are starting to run out. Imports to the United States during the second half of 2025 are expected to fall at least 20% year over year, according to the National Retail Federation. The decline from China will be even starker. JP Morgan expects a 75 to 80% drop in imports from there. Yesterday, a Trump-supporting owner of a clothing store actually begged the president to help out small businesses just like his. Take a look at this.
President Trump, as a longtime supporter of your mission and to make America great again, I want to be a part of that with you. But e-commerce companies all across the United States, we need more time. Give us a 90-day off-ramp to get off of our China goods and just tell us the plan. If you tell us the plan, we can operate and we can know what to do. The hard part about everything that's happening right now is we're trying to manage our business from day to day, and that's very difficult. And a lot of small businesses, they don't have the cash flow to get through a 90-day negotiation, and it's going to devastate a lot of businesses like Cuts. You know, I'm in a group chat with $1 billion worth of small businesses, and there's several in there that are telling me, hey, Stephen, 30 days or 60 days, we might not be able to make it. There's been too many adjustments to the supply chain that are just being really devastating on our business. 145% is essentially an embargo, and by cutting off our products to be able to sell them, it's going to be really difficult.
It's almost a little bit sad to watch him. I can't tell if I feel bad for him because he said that he's been a longtime supporter of Trump and of MAGA, but I don't know what he expected was going to happen. Also, I've said it before, for a presidential administration to enact all these widespread tariffs, right, on an entire population, not just here in the United States, but around the world, you can't just do something without having some kind of contingencies in place, some ways that are going to support the populace, the people who are going to be most affected by it. All of this feels very slapdash and very irresponsibly laid out. They just did it and said, whatever happens, happens. And they didn't seem to have any considerations for the business owners or just the regular average people who are going to be the most negatively impacted by all these tariffs. And that's really just most of Americans, whenever you consider that we're all going to see the prices at the grocery stores going up if they haven't happened already very, very soon. Cenk, what do you think? I mean, this is obviously very disingenuous coming from the Trump administration, but where do you think we're headed with all of this? What are your thoughts generally about these tariffs now that things are what is it? What do they say? The roosters are going to come home to roost. That's not it, but you know,
the chicken's going to come home to roost. So let's dive into it. First Trump, then this brother from Cuts, because I think he's a really interesting example. So I want to walk you through how his business is going to get affected, because it's going to affect so many other businesses and the entire economy. So first on Trump, he says, China's been calling me. No, they haven't. They put out a statement saying, no, seriously, we haven't called Trump at all, and we have no interest in calling Trump. And so they keep saying, no, it's okay, we're winning this one. China thinks, brother, we got a 100-year plan. You're gonna be out of office in 3.5 years. I mean, even if the tariffs lasted that long, which there's no way in the world that they will, have at it, Hoss. Because what the Chinese are saying and thinking is, we thought this through, and I bet you haven't. And I bet you're not ready to brace for impact and have all the different economic consequences hit the US and brush it off. And I think that the Chinese are unfortunately correct. Trump has not thought it through, as his supporter there is beginning to figure it out. It is going to be very painful. We are not going to be able to withstand the pain. And so then he'll have done damage, not just to the economy, but to the cause of tariffs. And even reciprocal tariffs with China, which we should have done a long time ago. Reciprocal is, hey, you do 10%, I do 10%. Not you do 10%, I do 145%. Because when you do 145%, as a lot of these folks are saying, and that businessman said it as well in the long version of the interview, 145% is an embargo. That you can't, that's not a thing you could do. So like, let's say that he's selling a shirt, and let's say it's a high-end shirt, it's $100, right? So and normally he gets it from China for, make up a number here, $50, right? Okay, 145% tariffs. All of a sudden, that shirt's worth, his cost to him is near $125. But he's selling it for $100, so it doesn't make any sense. Well, he has to double it because that's usually how it works in retail. So now the shirt he was selling for 100, he's got to sell for 250. Well, nobody's going to buy that shirt. So that's an embargo. That's not a tariff, right? So now when if you believe in tariffs that are reciprocal or targeted towards specific manufacturing base, we're all screwed. That's never going to happen after Trump, because the idea of tariffs is going to be so poisoned after all this, after it crashes the economy, which is the next part that I'm super curious about, because I feel like either I'm missing something or the rest of the country is missing something, because we buy an extraordinary amount of stuff from China and they're all going to be in essence embargoed. I don't think we realize the iceberg we're about to hit. Like everybody's like there's a little bit of panic in the business world. And for small businesses, there are bigger panic, in affected industries, bigger panic. But the stock market, I'm shocked, is not cratering. Soon, I think there's going to be tons and tons of empty shelves or products that are so expensive that they're totally unbuyable. So that's not a small amount of stuff that we buy from China. All right, let's see how it turns out, because my sense is this will be way more catastrophic than people realize. But the brother from Cuts is beginning to realize how catastrophic it is to his business. So let me go back to that example for a second. So why is he asking for 90 days? Because he's like, look, if I'm gonna buy from China, all of a sudden the $50 shirt is $125, I can't do it. So, and then when Jake Tapper asked him about, well, why don't you just buy from America? He's like, oh, we have been doing that in so long, textiles. In fact, not only are we more expensive in America, but unfortunately our quality has gone backwards. And the China and other places are very high tech, so their quality has gone up. This is not my words, that's his words, he's a Trump supporter, okay? And so he's gotta go buy from somewhere else. So he's gotta go figure out, hey, is there a price I could afford from Sweden or Cambodia? I don't know, any country that doesn't have 145% tariff. So he's in a panic right now, because if he can't, then no one's gonna buy his shirts and he's gonna go broke. Like not in like 2 years from now, in like 2 months from now. And what happens if that happens on a mass scale, which I kind of think probably will happen very soon? You think we can withstand that? Nah, people are gonna be super angry. And you know Trump, he's a flip-flopper. He doesn't know anything. He throws things up against the wall and see if it sticks. And this ain't gonna stick. So he's gonna flip-flop, but a ton of damage is gonna be done. One more thing here, it's interesting, actually 2 more things, because even his own supporters, like that brother voted for him, even though Trump talked about tariffs. Like there's a lot of things he didn't talk about. He didn't say, oh, I'm not gonna follow due process. So if you elect me, I'm gonna tear up the Constitution. I think he indicated that he hated the Constitution, didn't care about it and wanted to terminate it. He in fact said it once, but I couldn't get anyone to believe me, right? I couldn't get anyone to focus on how much he hates the Constitution and doesn't care. He just wants to be an authoritarian leader. But what's interesting is that his own voters and supporters, even on things he did say, like, well, I'm gonna tariff the hell out of people, they didn't really believe him. Since he lies so much and trolls so much and just says such nonsensical things, they just started doing wish fulfillment, right? Like putting their wishes onto Trump, not really listening to what he's saying, because 3/4 of what he says isn't true. Now come to find out, he actually did mean it about tariffs, and they're like, what the hell? I didn't know you really meant it. That'll totally destroy my business. If he knew about this earlier, would he have voted for Trump? I mean, unless he's an idiot and doesn't like his business and would like to go broke, he probably wouldn't have, right? So the fact that he's such an enormous liar and that his own voters don't believe him is such an interesting phenomenon, which leads us back to the original line that you saw in that clip. We're losing 5 million a day, and if we stop it, we start gaining money. No, we don't. That's not how it works. So we're not losing money. They're sending in products here. We pay for them and we pay a cheaper price than we would from anywhere else. And then we sell those products. So if you take a tariff and those products are actually bought, which they're not going to be because they're too high a price, then we would take money from a tariff, but we're not even gonna get that because it's essentially an embargo. So all that's gonna happen is that trade's gonna stop. So once the trade stops and we don't get any imports from China, do we then magically make money? No, we don't. He has no idea what he's talking about. He never does. Look, guys, we showed you the clip the other day. He doesn't even know what the Declaration of Independence is. He's like, it's all about unity and love and respect. No, it's not. It's the opposite of unity. It's declaring independence. Couldn't be more the opposite, right? We love the British Empire. No, we don't. That's why we declared war against them. Okay, so he knows nothing. You think that guy's gonna handle a sophisticated economic policy? That's why I feel bad for the guy because he's probably about to go broke, but when he's like, later in the interview, he's like, what's the plan? Please just tell us the plan. There is no plan, brother. I hate to break it to you. There is no plan.
There is no plan, and there really doesn't seem as if there ever was a plan. And Trump really feels like that isn't even his problem, that he needs to provide some type of plan. And I feel like I talk a lot about Trump's rhetoric because the way he speaks is very interesting to me. The words that he chooses to use, the way that he chooses to describe things to his voters, right? He uses words like reciprocal tariffs to mean one thing when it really is not the reality. He says things like it's 145% tariff when the reality is that it is more like an embargo. So he says a lot of things without explaining it. He almost changes the entire meaning of words, at least in the pop culture sense of politics, right? And I think a lot of that serves to confuse people, including the people who vote for him, including the people who hear the words that he says and really do believe him, right? Like they actually do think that the thing that he says, the thing that comes out of his mouth is, that's a fact, right? They really just, even at this point, at this stage in the game, 10 years after having dealt with Trump for so long, they don't understand that the things he says is not necessarily reality. And also, as far as the business owners, I do feel bad for them because they're dealing with this constant instability. I can't even make decisions for my own life, let alone my own business, without, wondering about what the country is going to look like a few months or a few years from now, right? It's very, very difficult for people to make big life decisions, such as like buying a house or even where to settle, because even the job market is so unstable, right? My husband works in in the tech industry kind of, and he's, Doge is just like looming in the corner, and it's very hard to move forward. And now these business owners, they're also experiencing their own version of that. You can't make business decisions when a lot of the things that were in place that stabilize the economy and stabilize the marketplace are no longer in place. Everything is up in flux right now. So people are just trying to get by from month to month, and that is not really a great way to run a business. And we saw it during the pandemic. So many businesses, especially small businesses, had to close down. And in this country, especially during the Obama era, there was a lot of push for small businesses to spring up and open in this country. Now we're seeing just the corporatists coming in and saying, we're going to scoop all this up and this is all ours now. And we have these big mega monopolies and Congress is not doing anything to stop them.
You've been arguing all week that this is President Biden's economy. When does it become the Trump economy?
It partially is right now. And I really mean this. I think the good parts are the Trump economy and the bad parts are the Biden economy because he's done a terrible job. He did a terrible job on everything.
That is your president basically taking blame for nothing and putting every bit of blame on his predecessor, Joe Biden. And for everything that's good, it's to his credit, to President Trump's credit. Everything that's bad goes right to Joe Biden. This trend of Trump taking credit when things are going well it's been going on since before he won his re-election bid. Before we get into that, Cenk, are you shocked that the president is dodging the blame for bad financial situations?
Shocked that there's gambling in this establishment. So first we're asking a poll during the live chat. Shows live 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern. Check it out every day. Whose economy is this? Trump, Biden, or both? Looking forward to your answers. So we showed last week a series of videos of Trump saying and comments saying, oh, the stock market's rising because they expect me to win, so it's my economy. Stock market's tipping, it's Biden's economy, Biden's terrible. They're rising again now, back to my economy. And so now he's here. He's like, yeah, partly mine, partly his. So what I always wonder about folks who are diehards in either camp is like, do you guys also have eyes and ears? Like, do you hear them? Do you not see how ridiculous that sounds? I'm amazed by it. But all right, here, let's give you more and see if you find all this. Maybe we'll find a way that some of you will think, oh, it's justifiable. It is, all the bad parts are Biden's and all the good parts are Trump's. Let's find out.
It has to be that way. We'll listen to some of that sound shortly here. By the way, I'm not sure whether I dislike hearing President Trump's voice more or hearing your imitation of President Trump's voice. That's
no problem, Michael.
Yeah, no, okay, I just figured it out. In January of 2024, the president declared on Truth Social, which you all know is his social media network, this is the Trump stock market because my polls against Biden are so good that investors, as Cenk just mentioned, are projecting that I will win and that will drive the market up. That's in January of 2024. And just a few days ago, you'll be shocked to learn that the president proclaimed, this is Biden's stock market, not Trump's. I didn't take over until January 20th. Our country will boom, but we have to get rid of the Biden overhang. I think he just invented something called the Biden overhang. And last week he even said this.
He came in on January 20th. So this is Biden. And you could even say the next quarter is sort of Biden because it doesn't just happen on a daily or an hourly basis.
I'm old enough to remember when George H.W. Bush and his administration, they were frustrated because they couldn't blame anything on Ronald Reagan because they were part of that administration. And they had to take blame for just about everything. It is presidential norm to actually blame your predecessor for some of the things that aren't going well. It doesn't know party, it's Democratic or Republican. But the sort of the switch right here, the immediate sort of pivot to it was their fault and or it's going to be so great because of what I did and now it's their fault because exactly what I predicted was going to happen didn't happen and it's all because of them.
Yeah. Okay, so first let me quote a member. Kevin Shea is a member on YouTube of the Young Turks and he wrote in, the buck stops over there. Okay, and that's exactly right, Kevin.
That is so good.
Right. Hit the join button. All of a sudden you pop up on the show. Okay. So now if you noticed, apparently Trump knows that it's going to get worse in the next quarter, because that's why he's like, next quarter could also be Biden's. From what I'm hearing, my tariffs are going to destroy the economy. I mean, Biden's tariffs. But wait, Biden didn't have tariffs, right? Biden, it's all Biden's fault. How could it be your economy in January of 2024 and his economy in April of 2025? How does that make sense? No. And look, if you're, hardcore MAGA and you think, no, I believe everything Trump says. When he says it's his economy, I believe it. When he says it's Biden's economy, I believe it. Like, guys, what are you doing? Like, why are you embarrassing yourself? Hitching your star to this, two-bit con man who keeps telling you to your face, when the market's up, it's me. When the market's down, it's Biden. They're like, really, guys, really? And I know, and Biden's young and dynamic. Okay, everybody wants to believe their own fantasies.
But to put it in MAGA parlance, let's go to the price of eggs, which is what he talked about at every stop on the road, and I was at a lot of them, how much eggs were. They were Biden's egg prices. Those egg prices have either gone up or remained stagnant now. Same with gas prices, even though he said you can get it for under $2 a gallon, and no one has shown a picture of a gas station where you can do that. Those were Biden's gas prices. Now are they still Biden's gas prices, or are they Trump's egg prices and Trump's gas prices? I mean, that is exactly the struggle that Trump is having, but it doesn't matter to the people who don't care what that is. They're going to blame Biden because Trump says to blame Biden, and there is a significant enough number of people, both in Congress and outside of Congress, for whom that is okay. But let's go back to this interview for a second. Trump, shockingly stuck to his absolutely terrible messaging on the tariffs, telling Americans their kids might have to deal with having fewer toys. Listen to this.
But sir, you acknowledge when you announced your tariffs, for example, You were at your cabinet meeting. You said, quote, I'm going to quote what you said, maybe the children will have $2 instead of $30.
Yeah.
And maybe the $2 will cost a couple of bucks more than they would normally. Are you saying that your tariffs will cause some prices to go up?
No, I think the tariffs are going to be great for us because it's going to make us rich.
But you said some dolls are going to cost more. Isn't that an acknowledgement that some prices will go up?
I don't think a beautiful baby girl that's 11 years old needs to have 30 dolls. I think they can have $3 or $4.
When you say they could have $3 instead of $30, are you saying
they don't need
Americans
$30.
could see empty store shelves?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying they don't need to have $30. They can have 3. They don't need to have 250 pencils. They can have 5.
Nobody has that many pencils. Also, kudos to the New York Post, to whom I never would give a kudo, but their headline the day after the president said this was "Skimp on the Barbie," which I thought was great. It's a play on shrimp on the Barbie. Yeah, that was the third time in less than a week that Trump has brushed aside concerns about the effect of his new 145% tariff on China and suggested that America should be comfortable with fewer things. I mean, it's Jimmy Carter saying, turn down your thermostat, and America going crazy over that. It's wartime rationing. This is, I mean, I'm not comparing, the food you're getting to Barbie dolls. But the point is, the president is saying, no, we don't have to make adjustments, and no, this isn't going to hit us hard, except that you're going to have to buy fewer dolls because you can't afford more dolls because the prices are going to go up, which is exactly the opposite. Republican strategist Karl Rove slammed Trump's comments, saying on Fox News, it sounds like Mr. Scrooge. The ordinary American is like, wait a minute, I thought you were on my side. I did not think you're on the side of I need to do with less. That's Karl Rove. Trump, of course, you'll be shocked to know, didn't agree with or appreciate that jab, responding on Truth Social, which we have referred to before. I don't need to have Karl Rove of Fox News to tell me what to do. The guy's a total loser who's been wrong about almost everything. Not a huge Karl Rove fan. He won and oversaw 2 presidential elections that won. He was a recount away from losing also and being a footnote in history. It doesn't matter. I think Karl Rove is saying exactly, Cenk, what many of us are thinking when he is saying that the president is telling us, hey, you're going to have to do with less. That doesn't sound like the optimistic shining city on a hill president that Karl Rove likes.
Yeah, I'm going to do Sean on the foot in a second, which we all enjoy. But first, I'm going to go to more of our members because I think they make some good points, and I want to answer a question. Jerry McMullen said, that was a stereotypical corporate management answer. Everything's great due to my efforts. All these failures are another's fault. They're my actions, but it's not my fault. And there is a lot of corporate speak that goes like that, and everybody can relate to that, and that's Donald Trump right there. Okay, so great point, Jerry. Told you, hit the join button, boom, you pop up on the show. So Charles Lloyd did the same thing, and he popped up and he said the stock market runs on a 20-second cycle. He knows this and it will change on a word. Charles, here's the thing, brother. When there are empty shelves or there's supply chain issues and the prices skyrocket, and at 145%, one of those 2 things are guaranteed. And that's a tariff that eliminates the possibility of buying that product because it makes it so expensive, right? So when that happens, the stock market will go in a more prolonged dive. And it won't be 20 seconds, because that's the real world. And the real world has consequences in the business world. But we're all gonna see and find out together, right? And I'm telling you ahead of time, this is my easiest prediction, right? Yes, the economy will turn downwards when the 145% tariffs hit. By the way, they have begun to hit. So it's beginning now, and you'll see it over the next couple of months. And you'll get to see who was right. Was Trump right? Oh yeah, when the economy's great, me. Okay, maybe he's right, or maybe I'm right, and then you'll get to judge. Last one, Amanda Hobson said, the guy who sits on a golden toilet is blaming children for living in excess.
Well, there is that, right? I mean, you can imagine that, first of all, even in a perfect untariffed world, most little girls and most households can't afford $40 dolls, I wouldn't imagine, for their young girls. So that's the other thing is this whole skewed context of what is normal anyway.
Yeah, He's sitting there going, "Oh, all my girls have $30." I know, because you're the guy who is pretending to be a billionaire. Well, actually, to be fair, he now is a billionaire because of his crypto scams, which is what we're going to get to later in the show.
Exactly. That's a great segue.
Yeah, but hold on. It's the last thing. I promise. What if, right? So if the shoe was on the other foot and Biden said, "Yeah, so what? Maybe you used to have 30 of something, now you only have 3 something. You'll have 10% of what you used to have." Republicans, what would you have done? You would have ripped his face off, right? Rhetorically, politically, electorally, and that makes sense. If he had said, "Yeah, maybe I'll invade Greenland," you would have said, "Oh my God, he's got dementia." He said mental decline. Invade Greenland? What kind of nut says that? All in the same interview, by the way. And Kristen Walker asked him, "Are you going to uphold the Constitution?" He said, "I don't know." If Biden had said, "I don't know if I'll uphold the Constitution," what would you have done if you were MAGA? You would have ripped his face off, right? Again, rhetorically and politically, I hope. Trump says that's fine. Okay, you tell me what's Trump derangement syndrome.
Right.
Because that one goes both ways.
This reporter behind me was quite snarky the other day when President Trump talked about the girl having 2 dolls. And he said, "Well, what?" President didn't take the question, but he said, "What would you tell that girl?" I said, "I would tell that young girl that you will have a better life than your parents, that you and your family, thanks to President Trump, can now be confident again that you will have a better life than your parents," which working class Americans had abandoned that idea. Your family will own a home. You will be able to advance. You will have a good education. You will have economic freedom.
Gonna have to fact check the Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent there. There's not a single little girl in the world whose life is better off because of Donald Trump, and I'm including Ivanka there. Except maybe if you factor in if Donald Trump had more restraint than I imagine he had. But anyway, there he's talking about the economy and the way Trump has been talking about the economy. He, as always, has his mind on little girls and their dolls, and has decided to say that the tariffs aren't that bad. You're just gonna have 5 dolls instead of 30 dolls, and you'll spend more on it, but it's fine. It's a weird way to talk about the economy. Not only that he's so focused on dolls specifically, but that he really does make it seem as if the effect of the tariffs is going to be quite drastic. That you go from 30 dolls down to 5. That's a big drop in dolls. And look, that's Trump. He's weird, whatever. But a lot of Republicans don't necessarily agree with Scott Bessent. They would really prefer that he talk about the economy in a different way and didn't make it so clear to so many Americans that their holidays, their ability to buy gifts, their ability to participate in Americans' consumer culture is going to be so drastically affected by the tariffs. But that said, I don't think Scott Bessent really sells how strange Trump is when he talks about this. So in case you missed the original comments, here it is.
Somebody said, "Oh, the shelves are going to be open." Well, maybe the children will have 2 dolls instead of 30 dolls, and maybe the 2 dolls will cost a couple of bucks more than they would normally. But we're not talking about something that we have to go out of our way. They have ships that are loaded up with stuff, much of which, not all of it, but much of which we don't need. I don't think a beautiful baby girl that's 11 years old needs to have 30 dolls. I think they can have 3 dolls or 4 dolls.
When you say they could have 3 dolls instead of 30 dolls, are you saying
they don't need
Americans could see empty store shelves?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying they don't need to have 30 dolls. They can have 3. They don't need to have 250 pencils. They can have 5.
That again is a very big drop off in pencils. I know he's not good at math, but I want to stress that. And it was a good follow-up question by the interviewer there. I would have loved for her to ask him, beg him to talk about some product other than dolls, but I guess he eventually got to the pencils. In any event, look, he thinks it's great messaging to tell people effectively to just sit down and take it, that your ability to buy things for your family, toys for your kids, that's pretty much done. Just shut up about it and you're gonna be fine. But again, not great for people who have to run for office again. And it's also, I think, minimizing the actual effect in the end, because more than 70% of baby-related products purchased by Americans is manufactured by US companies, but in China. So that's basically every car seat, every stroller, every bassinet, every changing table, like these children's products. It's not like new parents have crowed over the past few years about how affordable buying all of this stuff is to begin with, and now it's 100% 150% more. So that's bad. The Juvenile Product Manufacturers Association is expecting overall markups of about 30% on those product categories. And again, like inflation has already been bad. People have already been paying more for this stuff. Groceries up 28%, daycare up 23%, baby food and formula up 10%, promising higher prices, less ability to buy things, and potentially empty store shelves is a pretty big 180 from the way he talked about his impact on the economy while he was running for office, David. But what do you make of it?
Well, and to take it one step further, and there's no relief in sight. I mean, Donald Trump for weeks has been saying, oh, we're having these wonderful conversations with China. And Scott Bessent went on one of the weekend shows last weekend and said, well, we're having talks with 17 countries. We've had no talks with China, the 18th. And China's the most important. So Bessent is out there standing for the lie that Donald Trump keeps making about all these wonderful talks, these wonderful deals. And by the way, as of tonight, we still have not a single deal, zero. And a lot of the manufacturers point out that when it comes to, the children's toys and the dolls or whatever it is, even if you were to make the tariffs even higher, there's still no way that over the next decade that manufacturing of these products is suddenly going to come to the United States. There's just no incentive or infrastructure for it. The designs for a lot of these companies, yeah, the designers are in the United States, but the manufacturing, the assembly of these dolls and toys and strollers and everything else is in China. And that's not going to change regardless of the tariff. So the only thing that is changing, as you point out, are the prices, that the prices are getting much higher. And I'll have to say that as a dad of a beautiful 11-year-old girl, she doesn't have 30 dolls. She's really into beads and things like that. And guess where her beads come from? China. And we've already seen that the price of the beads and all the art supplies is going way up. So it's impacting everybody already.
Yeah, I mean, look, maybe you used to have 300 beads, maybe you have like 4 beads, I mean, can you make a bracelet with 4 beads? I don't know, but I've always thought that jewelry is not about the beads, it's about the space between it. It's like jazz in that way. But anyway, yeah, this is a terrible strategy. It's so stupid, it's so self-destructive. We felt, or at least I'll only speak for myself, I felt like Joe Biden not only didn't accomplish more to reorient the economy, but he could have done more and vigorous messaging to make clear that people understand that he understands their pain. Now though, looking back at Biden, it feels like, my God, that guy was a master communicator in comparison to this. Like, you got Donald Trump telling people to get used to having 90% less than they used to, and then right-wing independent media like Charlie Kirk telling people to shut up about the eggs and everything. Like, that's not how you explain to people that you understand. And while there's not a lot of Republicans that are willing to come out and like directly slam this messaging, they're sort of getting towards that. So a half dozen GOP senators were apparently asked by The Hill about their remarks. None of them threw their full weight behind them. Some said they understood Trump's point to a certain degree, or pointed to his unique style of communication, which is one interesting way to put that. But Senator Kevin Cramer told The Hill, the thing that I admire about it is he is willing to acknowledge that tariffs may have a short-term consequence, but he believes in the long run they'll have a long-term benefit, and he's setting expectations at the family table level. But he might be setting the expectations as a millionaire that may not translate to the family worker. Well, first of all, you know full well that he's not just a millionaire, he's a billionaire, and he has been for a very long time. So he's even more disconnected than in your example. And it's fine to be like, he's willing to acknowledge the tariffs in the short term. I would like to just acknowledge, like, maybe you could have done that while you were campaigning, because he damn sure wasn't doing it then. He was being, oh, it's instant, day one, economy solved. Now we're stuck with him, and he's willing to acknowledge that he's wrecking the economy. That's nice. Anyway, Senator Capito, member of GOP leadership, says he thinks it's a good example, but I'm not sure it's the best example about the dolls, or maybe the pencils, or dolls holding pencils. I don't know what's going on in his brain. And one final Senate Republican said, everything that we need to do needs to be instructed by people who experience scarcity. And that's clearly the words of somebody that never has. It's not really sensitive to the circumstances of people that are struggling every day. It would be helpful to be more relatable. And like, that's as close as they're gonna get to actually slamming him as an out of touch billionaire who not only hasn't like had to go to the store and buy a product in what, decades at this point? You think he's like shopping for groceries, or he doesn't even buy presents for his wife's birthday? You think he's buying dolls for Ivanka or something? And so I just hope that the Democrats are clipping all this stuff out and then throw it into ads, show the changes in prices. I can add one. My wife was looking at a stroller to buy for her nephew who's expecting a child. And she messed up because she saved it in her shopping cart and it was $400. And then the price was updated, I guess because it's coming from China, $600, 50% more.
The political messaging, as you point out, is fascinating in all this. And I think the reason some of the Republican senators are sort of being gentle is because they still have to deal with Donald Trump. Karl Rove, the former Bush advisor who's on Fox News, described Donald Trump as being like a Scrooge and that this was a terrible message to be talking about, oh, you're gonna have to make do with less toys. I would take it even a step further. You mentioned that Donald Trump has sort of a unique way of talking, or the senators say that. Well, it's unique to the extent that Jimmy Carter had a unique way of talking about the energy crisis in the 70s in his malaise speech, where he suggested, well, we're all just gonna have to turn down the thermostat and wear some more sweaters. And that was a horrible message for Jimmy Carter. And I think if the Democrats were smart, to your point, they would take the same strategy now with Donald Trump and say, hey, Donald Trump is asking all of us to suffer. He wants all of you to sacrifice and to not go with these toys. That's not an optimistic, America is strong, America's great kind of message. And it is political dynamite. So to your point, I do hope the Democrats follow through.
This morning, I'm thrilled to announce that we have reached a breakthrough trade deal with the United Kingdom. Incredible country. The final details are being written up in the coming weeks. We'll have it all very conclusive, but the actual deal is a very conclusive one. We think just about everything's been approved.
So today, Donald Trump announced that he has reached a trade agreement with the United Kingdom. But is it a good deal? We will let you know. We'll show you one Trump cabinet member who wildly embarrassed himself with how excited he was about this deal being made. And we'll talk about some more of the details. But first, Cenk, your reaction to this story.
Yeah, it's not really a deal. There is a part of it that is real. We'll tell you which part that is, but it's like microscopic. And so this is mainly Trump going, we got a great deal, everybody, don't worry about it. But the way the stock market reacted was curious to me. So let's show you what a non-deal it is, so you have the right context for, yes, but what's going to happen next? Because my theory is disaster is going to happen next. Let's see if I'm right.
Okay, so a lot of you might know that, remember that Trump slapped all these tariffs on a bunch of different countries on what he called Liberation Day. Here's what trade with the UK looked like before Liberation Day. The US carried $11.9 billion trade surplus in goods with the UK in 2024, which ranked the UK as the 5th highest surplus among all trade partners. But very important to say that the United Kingdom was not one of the countries that faced those broad reciprocal tariffs, okay? It was not one of the countries on the bulletin board. However, it was subject to the universal 10% import tariff that applies to all countries, okay? So they didn't get any crazy ones slapped on them. Trump was just like 10%. So after this conversation, we'll talk about some of the nuances of this in a second, but roughly, here's what they get. The UK gets, we eliminate a 25% tariff on UK steel and aluminum. It reduces the tariff on British cars from 25%, it was like de facto 27.5 because of a service fee, and takes that down to 10% on first 100,000 cars, okay? What we get is we are fast tracking US goods through customs. The UK is going to buy $10 billion worth of Boeing jets, and they promise to pull, quote, non-tariff barriers to goods. And finally, according to the White House, the deal will, quote, create a $5 billion opportunity for new exports for farmers, ranchers, and producers, including more than $700 million in ethanol exports and $250 million in American beef and other agricultural products. There's still some details, but with that, just at that point, we'll pause. Cenk, what do you think?
So the beef, the agricultural products is real. Getting rid of some of the barriers that existed is real enough. The $10 billion Boeing deal they were going to do anyway, right? The fast tracking is like pretty easy. So here's how you can tell whether it's a big deal or not. You go and look at the how business folks are responding. And so there we had two curious things happen. One was the markets responded really positively in the beginning. They lost a little bit at the end, or lost some of their gains at the end, so still up a decent amount. So they were like really encouraged by this. Well, let's see if I'm right or wrong, but I think they were wrong, okay? I think that they were so thirsty for good news that they were like, oh, we got a trade deal, kind of. We have a concept of a trade deal, right? And they got irrational exuberance, but maybe I'm wrong. So JP Morgan put out an analysis, and they're like, it'll make just a tiny difference in the UK. Not sure it'll make any difference in the US. So that's their guidance, not to political world. They don't care about us. That's for the investment folks. Like, so if you're making decisions based on this deal, the effect is going to be microscopic. So that sounds right to me based on what I know and their analysis of it. So I think people are excited for no reason at all, only because Trump punched himself in the face so hard, and they think they stopped the bleeding in one of the noses, but I don't think they did. And so I'll get to what I think is going to happen next in a second.
Gotcha. Okay, so then we'll go on with some more details on it. It seems that every day since Trump's second term began, at least one cabinet member has utterly debased themselves in front of the cameras. And in an attempt to essentially spin the effectiveness of Donald Trump and tout how awesome he was and basically say, please, please don't fire me, Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick said this on purpose in front of everyone.
This was the president's deal, and people think, oh, that's not the way it works. If you got to sit next to him, I have the best deal maker to my left, and if you don't think that we take advantage of him calling the prime minister and getting that deal done, you don't understand who's the president of the United States. So he's the closer. He gets deals done that we could never get done because he understands business, he understands deals, and that's why we're here today. And this is a perfect example of why Donald Trump produced Liberation Day. People don't understand he gets things done in a matter of time. This would have taken Jameson and I 3 years, maybe. And instead, we got it done in 45 days, certainly because we work for Donald Trump.
So I just want to show you some other of the humiliating ass kissing, and then we'll talk about Lutnick in a second. But like, it just has the same energy as all these clips.
Thank you so much for dreaming big dreams and doing unprecedented things. Your entire life you have stood for doing things that other people thought they couldn't do and accomplishing unprecedented events and achievements.
I think the president is one of the, if not the most knowledgeable president that we've ever had. Look, people can beat on President Trump all you want. President Trump's a game changer.
Everybody I've met, whether it's in a coal mine or at the border, law enforcement, the one thing they say on those trips is, please thank President Trump from all of us.
President, your first 100 days has far exceeded that of any other presidency in this country, ever, ever. Never seen anything like it. Thank you.
It's thank you, sir, may I have another. That's what it reads as for me. But Lutnick, anybody with the, you kind of have to be Jewish to know this, but anyone who their name ends with Nick, you can just turn into the sense that guy's such a Lutnick. Like, I don't know, no Jews here, but it's just like, it's so perfect for that guy. He's such a huckster. He's just such a charlatan. But he was basically saying this is the fastest anything could ever happen. It was amazing to watch Donald Trump at work as an attempt to say that Trump's trade policy, say what you will about it, he wants to say that this is exactly the kind of results we could only achieve if Trump handled the trade war this way. Do you agree? What do you think, Jake?
How am I gonna agree with that? It's so comical, right? So look, I always think shoe on the other foot, right? So if Bernie was president and somebody's sitting up there going, Bernie is the greatest person in the history of the world, and without him, we would have been a mess. Would have taken us 3 years to even put our shoes on. But with Bernie, we made the greatest. I'd be like, shut up, shut up. Like, I appreciate it. Like, you guys should brag about the deal. I believe in marketing in the context of politics is super important. Democrats don't do it enough, right? But this ass kissing of your boss is unbearable, right? So you don't have to be mean to the guy. You don't have to needlessly insult him. But at the same time, this like fawning, and it's like, come on, MAGA, you see it, right? I mean, Like, I know that we get in our bubbles and it's hard for people to see, right? But I think that stuff is so gross that even your own supporters have to see how, obsequious it is, like greasy, like, they all look like Gollum.
And it's exactly like Kim Jong-un must have his ministers treat him. Like that's the problem. I talked to my friend who's like kind of been friendly about Donald Trump and nice, but it's like, do you not see that these guys are kissing his ass in a way that is not, and the media is kissing his ass in a way that's not healthy at all, that is only that makes it already seem like we're in a dictatorship. And then he punishes people who don't act that way.
And look, I'll be fair as usual on this as well. So you don't see it as much in public from the Democrats, certainly not from the progressive wing. People say nice things about Bernie, but nothing like this, right? But I've been on calls with Democratic politicians where, oh my God, and in meetings and in person, et cetera, where it is unbearable. It's like, oh, now the great honorable lady from Maryland, and she's just such an amazing political figure, has made all this difference in our lives. And I'm like, I never even heard of her. She didn't make any difference, okay, at all. And then the next person gets on, and then, oh, she's the most amazing, blah, 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 blah. And then Nancy Pelosi, I've been there too, okay? And then when Nancy Pelosi is about to speak, oh my God, it is like this, it is. She is the greatest master legislator of all time. Are you ready to rumble? The greatest person to ever live, Nancy Pelosi. And I'm like, blah, right? And MAGA, if you're not going blah over Lutnick and Bondi and et cetera doing the same, I mean, MAGA is supposed to be tough guys. You really want to be known as ass kissers? I mean, up to you guys.
So on the trade policy itself, here's what's frustrating for me is like he went out there and was like, I am gonna they want to spin it as Donald Trump shook up the world and was like, all right, come and play. But the first person he's making a deal with, he didn't do that to. He just put a 10% tariff on it. He didn't do those like crazy reciprocal tariffs on that. So that isn't part of the plan. And then also Navarro said on day 90 we'll have, as one of them said, they have 200 trade deals. There's not 200 countries. This is the stuff I have so much trouble with. It's like the left gets made fun of for for treating everybody like they're stupid, but like I can't call out that this guy's a weirdo for saying that there's 200 countries and that everybody is gonna go with him on that. Like I find that insane. This was obviously not the plan, and this stuff, most of the deals that Cenk points out, were gonna happen anyway. I don't know about any like ongoing trade deals that have specific quotas for like deals that were already in the works for like specific planes you were gonna buy.
Yeah, look, real quick on that stuff. So number one, let's notice that, oh, great, Boeing got a deal. Who's Boeing? Does Boeing live in Kansas, Nebraska? Where does Boeing live? Oh, it's a corporation. Oh, another corporation got another $10 billion deal. Maybe that creates a couple of jobs here in America, but don't get it twisted like they're doing you a favor. They're doing a giant corporation who's a donor and a military contractor a deal and a favor, right?
What I think people want from Boeing is what I think most people want the government to do with Boeing is go in there and push back against some of the weird shareholder serving nonsense that they've been doing, where they've been going through and not actually adhering to safety standards. Like that's what we want out of Boeing. We don't need fix the planes first, then sell them to Europe.
Yeah. So SickP44 had an interesting comment on Twitch, one of our members on Twitch. The United States imports a wide variety of goods from the UK. A significant portion of the UK made cars, including, oh yeah, premium brands like Bentley and McLaren are exported to the US. And I was like, oh, that's why Britain was up first. Not because they're an amazing ally, et cetera, but because probably some rich people called and they're like, do you know how much the price of Bentleys went up?
Yeah.
No, I need a deal with the British immediately. Okay. So anyway, good point. I love our members. By the way, the guy who said that they have already started 200 trade deals was Donald Trump himself. Of course. I mean, and nobody can correct the president. Hey, there aren't that many countries, let alone the ones that you put tariffs on, let alone the fact that we only have one kind of a deal with one country, and China's never called, and you kept saying that, oh, they're calling, you're trying to make a deal, and then your Treasury Secretary came out and said, no, they're not. We've had no contact with them at all, right? Like, when do people get tired of the lies? And I think that a lot of people are, actually. There's folks like Eric Erickson and other right wingers who are like, this deal sucks. And so, as I've been saying, they're splintering like crazy. And remember, this one they splinter even more on because big business is on the opposite side. So whoever's getting paid by big business is attacking this, and Trump can't stop that because there's too many of them, right?
And if you're a steel worker, you're like, oh, that's awesome that Trump just helped British steel workers by eliminating that tariff.
Yeah, I mean, if you make a fair trade deal, no problem. Yeah, their side is going to win while we win as well. Whether it's a good trade deal is a different question. As Erickson points out, again, a right winger, he's like, but Britain basically has 2%. We kept 10% on them, so that's a 5x. It's not reciprocal at all. It's still kind of gigantic, and it's still going to raise prices here in America, not in Britain, right? And so they're just seeing this all wrong. So last things here for me is, well, what's next? So what's next is in the Port of Seattle, they did a story on one of the cable news outlets yesterday. There was a grand total of 0 ships that had come in yesterday. And the last time that happened was during the great supply chain problems of the pandemic. The ships are not coming in because there's nothing to sell, because they normally get from Asia, not just China, he explained, the guy who runs the port, but a lot of Asia. But the ones from China is 145% tariff, so you can't sell anything. It's way too expensive. So they're not bothering to ship it because no one's gonna buy it with that kind of tariff. So tick, 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 tick. So what I always tell you is hold us accountable. If it turns out there are no empty shelves, the prices don't go up, I was being alarmist because I have TDS, right? Then okay, say, hey, Cenk, you were wrong, look at this, here we are in June, July, August, and nothing happened, and we got nothing but great deals from Trump. All right, then we'll see if that happened, okay? But my guess is, once they start seeing the empty shelves and the higher prices, a larger than expected panic is going to set in. And then that's when Trump is going to start backpedaling furiously. Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows. Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows.